Yo, what's up?
What up, African?
Hey, bro. This thing's growing.
Hey, bro. What's
What?
my guy named Don? Don still whooping you, bro.
Yeah, he's banned. That
dude's still whooping you, bro.
He's banned. So we ain't about competition. This is socialism over here.
Bro, you can float your little green leaf all you want to, man. My boy show up on here. You gonna tuck your little,
find a place to put it.
You gonna tuck your little leaf.
We ain't gotta worry about that. I'm a socialist, so all his plants belong to me. So it ain't even this. It's just a cooperation. It's not a competition.
Hey man, that's what the person that's losing tend to say.
Yeah, you can tell I'm a winner.
Man, how you feel? Everybody good?
I'm good, man. Yeah, people tripping. Listen, I got a cousin who thinks that, I don't know how to enjoy the finer things. So she buys me jerseys. She sent me like LeBron. I got what's the other dude's name? Who's the other guy? Steph Curry. So I got she sent me a LeBron and a Steph Curry jersey.
Okay, that's intense.
She wants me to learn to appreciate the finer things. So
okay.
And I'm like Wise Intelligence said, I ain't turning down nothing but my collar. So if you send me something, speaking of sending me stuff, can I share some things before we get into the topics?
Yeah, do your thing.
Oh, because look, I got some things here. Some things. So we're gonna do
what we got?
What they call it? Unpackaging?
Yeah. Unpackaging. Unwrapping. What is it? Unboxing,
yeah. So let's see what we got here. This is from a Dr. Oh, I got me a
look, you see that second edition
he signed
on there
it too. He put the ball symbol in here. I ain't gonna let y'all see what it say. It could be something mushy. I don't want to cry on the air. It continues to be an honor. Sorry, I gotta do my. Hold on, let me see what he wrote here. Let me see him. It continues to be an honor working with such an elite hater. Okay. Much love to you and your family. Okay. From Dr. Ball, signed copy. If you ain't got yours, get yours. I got man, second edition. So shit is fly. So
must be nice.
I got something else in the mail too. One more again. From Goodwill Industries. The Color of Law. You see that?
Yeah.
So this one ain't signed. I've had a couple of people ask me about this, so I got me 2 books on deck. Thank you to Dr. Ball. And whoever sent this, make yourself known so I can do some reciprocities. I owe so many people so much. I'm in so much revolutionary debt. But shout out. Hopefully I can get some stuff taken care of before I head to Kansas City. So anyway, that's it for the unboxing. So how you been this past couple of weeks?
Man, blessed, bro. Like really blessed. Everybody healthy. More time with the kids. Stay over there. You know what I'm saying, on their phones.
You let your kids have phones, brother? I don't do paperbacks over here. Everything hard. We hard over here. Hard. I don't do paperbacks. You know how I do. Bling.
Man said you know how I do.
Anyway, Marlena over there with her struggle paperback bendy books.
Bendy books. That is
We want
hilarious.
everything hard over here. Pause.
Whoa. You got a lot of dip on your chip.
Yeah. I swear this is filtered water. This ain't no white alcohol. Anyway, let's recenter. How are you? I'm sorry. You said okay. So you said your kids. You said your kids. Yeah, and man, the kids are good and healthy and on the phone.
Yeah, they've been doing their swimming lessons and we had soccer training today.
Oh yeah, I forget you middle class. I be forgetting soccer and swim classes. Okay. Okay. All right. That's good.
Yeah, my youngest went to the 8 feet today and touched the bottom of the pool.
Whoa.
Yeah, touched the bottom of the pool and swam out.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So it's just
you breaking generational curses when it comes to black kids and swimming.
Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah. So.
I'm gonna keep mine real. I don't know how to swim. Don't none of us know how to swim. We too black for that over here. Y'all go ahead and do that middle class business. We black as hell here. On my side, I'm raising my kids to be black.
You would drown in 4 feet of water. Like,
if that's what it takes. If that's what the ancestors want for me.
If that is the price that I must
business. But shout out, black, there's a sister who did this documentary series called No More Under, and she talked about the history, the correlation between the stereotype and the reality of black people not being able to swim and segregation, Jim Crow, discrimination, and all that. So, that's some history. Everything we do is tied to Africa and colonization and slavery. It's all intertwined. So for better or for worse. But anyway, good. I'm glad that the children sound healthy and they're doing well. My sons are doing well, but my kids are grown. So I don't know where my kids are. Huh?
Yeah, I said I got these little ones, man. I'm loving every minute of it, man.
That's child, the ghetto, little kids, small children, the ghetto. I done aged out.
I love it, bro. I love it,
punch
bro.
that card. No more adolescence. I got a high schooler and a college student. I'm free and I'm safe. I think. My oldest will be 21 in 3 days.
Okay.
So I had a 21-year-old, 2 grown.
Real adult.
Yeah, so I'm free, man. That young childhood stuff. Child, the ghetto. Anyway,
man.
You heard about that?
Everybody good your way?
Huh?
Everybody good your way?
Yeah. Everybody's good. We're looking forward to heading to Kansas City and spending some time in Killer City, State of Misery. Shout out to KCMO, East Hills Village Boys.
Oh, that's it.
And it was. I think they kind of got affiliated with the blood. I stayed on the porch. I never jumped off the porch. I just can only tell you what I saw looking from my grandmother's bedroom window, what them cats was doing in the streets. Let me say, how people say, ask about me. When you get to Kansas City, don't ask about me.
Yeah, what'd you say they was calling you? De La Soul and what rap group you told me about? The Village Prophets, the Village what?
The Inner City Natives?
No, the dude you was telling me about, I had never heard of. They had an album.
Dream Warriors.
Yeah, the Dream Warriors, man. That
real hip hop, son.
That's one of the worst names I've ever heard.
Dream Warriors? Yeah, okay. All right.
I guess that's yikes.
Anyway, I'm just saying when you get to Kansas City, don't ask about me. You go to Kansas City, be like, yo, bro Diallo, and they be like, yeah, we do. Dude, we weren't gonna rob you, but since you brought that name up, give us your lunch money. Give us your lunch. Yeah,
man, you know how mad I'll be if I went out of town and got robbed, man.
No, I'm hood good.
So upset.
I'm hood good. I'm good where I'm from. So I can go.
Yeah.
I can walk with my head up. So everybody know I
That's
ain't
how I
got
feel
nothing.
about Jackson. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't have nothing nobody want
They
to
ain't
take.
got nothing. Right. So they know I ain't done nothing. I ain't got nothing. And if anything. People be giving me stuff. They ain't trying to take nothing from me. So I'm hood good. My name still is good
What was that
on the
dude's name?
streets.
He was at Morgan. Is he still at Morgan?
Oh,
He was a writer. He did the documentary. I forgot what the document. I forgot exactly what it was on, but what I remember about it was he talked about people broke in his house and they tore everything up but the bookshelf.
who
I just
was
thought,
that? That's happened to me a
yeah,
couple of times.
yeah,
That's happened to me
yeah.
a couple of times. I've had a couple of break-ins, and I never had a book touch. Bless their hearts. Bless their crackhead hearts.
Yeah,
Anyway,
no,
I guess
dude.
we gonna have to start to discuss. You heard about that sister in Texas, black woman, who shot her Uber driver in the back of the head. There was a black woman, 48-year-old sister, and she called an Uber or Lyft, and had the Uber or Lyft was driving. As the driver was driving her, he was close to the border, the U.S. Mexico border, and she feared that she was on the verge of being abducted and driven into Mexico, city, I think Ciudad Juarez or some northern Mexico town. So because she was afraid that she was on the verge of being abducted, she pulled out a gun and shot her Uber driver in the back of the head. She then proceeded to take a picture of her driver's corpse and sent it to her boyfriend, and then she called 911. In fear of kidnapping. You haven't heard that story? Yeah, it was definitely Uber. So, and ugliness. Let me see if I can pull up the story. A woman fatally shot an Uber driver in Texas. Police say she wrongly thought she was being kidnapped. That's her defense. She claims that she's a grandmother, 48. Now, when I first heard this story, I thought for sure this was a white woman. I thought for sure this was some Karen, and the family has a GoFundMe, and they're asking for community support because she claims that she told the driver to stop several times. She said, stop the car. And she saw that there were signs for entering Mexico along the highway. And because the Uber driver did not respond to her demands that she stop, she shot him while he was driving. And when he was shot and murdered, he veered off the road and hit a median. And the car crashed. This is coming off the heels of that sister, Carly Simmons, the sister that said that was kidnapped. She said she saw a baby on the highway, and that evoked a lot of provoked a lot of people's trauma and memories about the thousands of missing Black girls all over the United States, and how the U.S. does not prioritize kidnapped and missing Black women and children. And what's crazy about this is that I said I've been called out so many times. Carlene Russell, I thought, so many times that Black people are adopting white gun culture. And we are so keen on identifying brainwashing. And I used to hear this a lot more when I was younger in the movement and in the community. brainwashed, that black people, we being brainwashed, black people being brainwashed. And we would always call out whenever a black person would publicly make a statement or publicly engage in certain behaviors, we'd immediately call that, oh, that black person is brainwashed. But I never hear that anymore. I never hear that anymore. And people get mad at me because I stand in principled opposition to gun culture. I advocate for gun regulations. And there's this myth, there's this delusion amongst the black masses that guns somehow are either symbols of our freedom, or guns are somehow a deterrent to government overreach or government tyranny, or that guns in the community are somehow will be mobilized in the event of a race war or some major race conflict. So that comes up every time you start to discuss gun regulation, or gun violence abatement. And people get mad at me, which is going to go deeper in as we get into Gangsters Paradise and Hood Parasites. But I'm seeing black people. Have you heard of Black Rambo? You ever watch his videos?
Yes. I get good laughs out of him.
What's funny about that shit?
I'm a Southerner, man.
I'm a Midwesterner. Nice to meet you.
I bought my 10-year-old a 22 rifle before he was born. He just smiled real big when I said that. I exist in one of those weird spaces where I don't think people like you are wrong for, wanting handguns to be regulated better. I don't think I disagree with that premise. I do just know that I don't want to reach for a shoe if somebody running my house.
That's a marketing gimmick.
I mean, of that is.
Listen.
This is what I'm saying. Okay,
hold on.
Diallo. Go ahead.
I can't believe. Now, do you understand the likelihood of someone running in your house to do you harm, or running in your house while you're there? And
Yes.
and what's so crazy to me, as I go to the CDC and other research bodies, and I look at the statistics related to black premature death and black injury. Black premature death and black injury. Correct? And I'm like, well, if you're really saying, well, I'm dealing with these guns as a precaution to protect the life and well-being of my family, and the top 10 killer of black people, the top 5 killer causes of black death and premature death and black injury, and I see that guns are not even up there, but black people always go to that first, this fictional man that's going to kick in your door. These
but Diallo,
fantasies,
this what I'm saying, bro.
These fantasies.
See, you talking about other people may not live that reality, but in Jackson, property crime is real. And I'm not talking about property crime like, but for the grace of God, I was out of town when my house was burglarized, and I was married at the time, and my wife wasn't there. Like these youngsters are really active, bro. Like they active in a weird way. One of the things recently, I was leaving, and I saw a youngster. I saw a youngster walking down the street. I saw a youngster walking down the street with a Drake. You know what a Drake is?
Yes, I know what a Draco.
Okay, this guy had a Drake in the front of his pants, like legit walking down the street.
Did you shoot him?
No, like he wasn't coming for me.
So what that got to do with anything?
What you mean? What they got to do with anything?
Why
Like,
are you mentioning this young man having a Drake in a discussion about your guns? What does his gun have to do with your gun?
Because that's what he got.
Well, what does that have to do with you?
When he want to take something from me, what I got to shoot?
Did he take something from you? Did he take something from you?
No.
First of all, have you ever been robbed?
Yes.
At gunpoint?
No. My house was burglarized.
Have you ever been robbed? That's not a robbery. A burglary and a robbery are two different things.
No, ain't nobody ever ran up on me to take nothing. Like, thank the Lord.
I've had people, I've been ran up on and been robbed more than once. More than once. I've been robbed at least 3 times. And my homie, I hope you get to meet my day one homie. I grew up. I mean, we go way back to the 3rd grade. He was with us one of those times. And let me tell you, in a robbery scenario, you could have 50 guns on you. And the gun...
The one that's up first win.
Exactly. And that's generally how robberies work. Being, so the times when I was robbed, if I had a gun, it would be more of a threat to me than the robber. Because by the time somebody's got a gat in your face and they pat you down, or their homies are patting you down, depending on how many of them there are and how they proceed, a gun is not necessarily of any use to you in a robbery scenario. And if both parties has a gun in a robbery scenario, like there were 2 young ladies who got robbed here in Chicago earlier this year, back in February. One of the women had a gun and one of the women were unarmed, but they were together. Guess which one walked away from that robbery scenario with her life? The unarmed woman or the woman with the gun?
I'm guessing to make your point, the unarmed woman.
What do you imagine?
I mean, I imagine somebody running at me with a gun and I return fire.
No, I mean in that situation.
If the gun up, the up gun win.
Exactly.
Like, that's what I'm saying, bro.
Wait.
Diallo, you just said, bro. Diallo, you giving anecdotal evidence. Well, I'm telling you,
I'm not giving anecdotal. We can go to the CDC,
bro. And
if you don't want to talk, because you're the one that brought up some kid walking down the street with a gun,
with a Drake up.
I live right off King Drive.
Man, blessed be you,
dude. Believe you me, I've been surrounded by some of the most extreme cases of violence. And if I ain't learned nothing in life from my life experience, it's how to navigate violence and gun-prone conditions. And I'm telling you, adding the more guns you add to that situation, the more potential for death and harm you add to that situation. That's just what it is.
Well, and what I'm telling you is, I respect you. I wish you nothing but the best. You look at Bun B, will he be here without his firearm? We don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know that. But we know that, like, he returned fire and kept his family safe. It was some girls that got robbed in Georgia, and they returned fire. And without them returning fire, would they be here? So, like, I get you. This is your strategy. This is mine.
No, this isn't. We're not talking. Okay. Let's get out of the realm of person. The fact that because we went back to, you said, in case someone breaks in your house, you want to have a gun.
A youngster walking down the street with a Drake, and I don't have no gun.
Had nothing to do with you. Did you have a gun when you saw that young man with the Drake?
Yes.
Did you have any type of engagement or interaction with that young man?
No, I kept it moving.
And what did he do?
Kept it moving.
So what good did how did your gun serve you in that scenario?
How did I'd rather have it and not need it than not have it.
So it was psychological and emotional comfort.
Yep.
Because it served no practical purpose. Because even if that young man was like, I'm about to blow this dude, I'm about to open this dude up. Unless you drew on him the moment you saw that he was armed, even if he had harmful intent, what could you have done?
Return
even
fire.
if you're armed. Being
Return
that if
fire.
so, the whole time you were in, you saw from the moment you saw that guy, you kept looking at him, you kept eye on him.
No, I spotted where he was going, and then I just whooped around because I was in the car. He was on the street.
Oh, so well, I mean, so many of our people have to die and be injured for these fantasies, to fulfill these, to speak to these fantasies,
bro.
of
Let me tell you something.
self-defense.
This is what I'm saying.
And
This is what I'm telling you,
heroics.
Diallo, listen to me. I
I'm
got
listening.
a gun by my bed right now.
So do I.
Right, I got a gun by my bed right now. And last time I checked, that gun hadn't moved.
Okay. But I'm just trying
see
to
what I'm
speak to
saying?
your
So it ain't the
scenario.
guns. What I'm saying, it ain't the guns, bro. It ain't the gun. That gun
I'm
ain't
speaking.
moved.
You brought
That
up a
gun ain't
young
moved.
man
Walking
brought
down
up-
the street with a Drake.
and
that's
it
very
had nothing to
common where
do
I
with
am.
you.
And that gun
Okay.
ain't moved.
Dude, do I have to say
That
where I
gun ain't
live again?
moved.
Do I have to say
Bro,
where
all
I
I'm
live
saying is
again?
my gun hadn't moved. Like when I
Okay.
moved my gun
So,
is when my
but
gun moved.
why did you-
So this idea that guns on the street is what's causing the problem. No, brother. It is these people with guns that are causing the problems. A
That's some
gun by
redneck
itself
shit.
don't
Please
do
don't
nothing.
come on here talking redneck nonsense. You
I
brought
do
up a
have
young
kids. Preston John, I do have kids, and that's one of the reasons that I take my kids shooting and teach them weapon safety so that they know it's not a toy. They know it's a tool. So that's just what it is. And
brought
Tina, I think you're right as well. We do overestimate our abilities with guns. Like I absolutely do. I absolutely think that happens. But again, what I'm telling you is the door swing open. I would rather have a firearm than a stick. Unless stick is
Can
what
we return to reason and logic? Can we
if reason and
return?
logic means that I'm gonna have every tool that's possible to protect myself.
I mean, in this discussion right here.
If I am
In
going
this
to
discussion
use
between
in this discussion
us.
right here.
So
But kids do. Again, this is they absolutely do. I got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they not going in there playing John Wayne with a firearm.
Can we return to logic? You're the one that brought up the young.
And I'm gonna keep bringing it up, bro. If they walking around like that, you think I'm gonna walk around with a shoe? You think I'm gonna walk around with with hopes and prayers?
You brought up the young man with the Draco
walking down the street.
I don't understand how. I don't understand how you brought that up in order to speak to your rationale for being armed. Right? But in that situation, as we begin to dissect it or try to understand it, I don't understand how a young man walking down the street with a Draco speaks to the reason or rationale of your necessity to be armed.
Oh, that's easy. Because I don't have nobody that's going to come and help me for whatever he got on his mind.
Oh, my God. But nothing happened. The man went his way, you went your way. And in fact, you were a greater threat to him because it seems like in this scenario, you were fixated on him and you in your own mind was creating scenarios to which you could harm him. We don't, if he was, how do you know if he even saw you? Did you have any interaction with this young man?
Yeah, we saw each other. The gun.
Did you have any interaction with this young man with the Draco?
What would be my reaction? Hey, bro,
I said interaction. Did you have any interaction?
What would be the interaction, Diallo? If we look
the answer to that is yes or no. Did you have
the answer
any?
to that?
No.
What is an interaction? If we look at each other, if our eyes meet and we keep,
so you made eye contact with this young man, right? You made eye contact with this armed, and so we have two armed individuals, right?
Yep.
The guns were not relevant in that scenario.
Oh, it absolutely was.
What was the relevance in the guns in that interaction?
I don't know what this man got on his mind. Let me get out of his way.
Like I said, so you saw him as a potential threat.
Absolutely.
Would he be a potential threat if he was not armed?
Yeah.
Right. So what? So it seems like everything that happened with the guns could have happened without the gun.
Right. But with that gun, he got an advantage that I don't have. I won't be mindful.
That's not true because you had a gun as well.
Yeah, but his gun is out.
His gun was out and aimed at you?
No, absolutely
not. His gun was out at the ready? You said it was in his pants.
It's tucked in the front of his pants where I can see it.
So his gun wasn't out. Where was your gun?
I can see it. On my lap.
Listen, man, listen. Tricks think I'm tricking. Okay.
All I'm saying is, if you want to shoot, have your shoot. I don't know what my gun got to do with your shoot.
Okay, so let's get out of the arena. Let's get out of the arena of fantasy scenarios, because from my point of view, you're in fantasy land. Your fantasy interaction with this young man, whom, from based on our discussion here, it seems like you were a greater threat to that young man than he was to you. You were the one running. You were the one running some. You were the one imagining how you would harm this young man. I don't know what that young man was thinking.
What did I say I would harm the man other than saying that he had a bigger gun than mine? And I'm just like, oh, where this guy going? So I can not go that way.
Okay, so you saw him as a threat.
Absolutely.
So if you see someone as a threat, you just by natural biochemical response become a threat to that person.
Because I'm seeking to avoid.
Oh, well, you saw the flight. I'm glad you saw that scenario. But again, on top of all that, you have no evidence that this man intended to harm you or anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if I see big black Skipp walking down the street and you got your blick, and I'm like, oh, here's this dude, this black man with his gat, and he's a rapper, I hear, and my alarm bells start ringing. And my flight or flight adrenaline mechanism kicks in.
Right.
But okay. But back to the
reality.
Another
example. Last night we were riding and it was a guy. I assume it was a guy, but it was a person driving a small SUV in a bike lane.
Don't get me started on that.
The bike lane, hold on, bro. I'm in this. The bike lane is a large enough median that two people could walk. Yeah, thank you. But hold on, bro. Okay, bro, let me do this. I'm gonna get with you. The bike lane is large enough for, definitely a couple bikes to pass, but it also has a median. Absolutely not. You're not finna eat candy before you eat that. You're not finna do that. Just go back over there. No, we're not doing that. Absolutely.
Parenting.
So the median is large enough that it would take 3 or 4 steps to cross. This guy is driving on the bike lane on the inside of the median. You know what I did?
No.
Stopped.
Okay.
This his road. Whatever he want to do, this his road. Okay. When I got to where he got back where he needed to be, I came to another complete stop. When he went right, hey, boys, we're going to take the long way home. We're going to go left because I don't know what's on this man's mind. My weapons exist for when those things happen and I've sought to evade and I can't evade, and fire must be returned. That's it.
Back to reality. Back to life. The reality of gun ownership in the United States. What percentage of gun owners in the United States ever have the opportunity or the misfortune of using those guns to thwart harm to themselves or others? What percentage there's more guns in this country than people. Yep. What percentage of gun owners do you believe have the opportunity to utilize those guns to thwart any scenario? Home invader, jump out the bushes, boogeyman.
It don't matter.
No.
All it take is one. All it take is one.
Fuck, man. Okay.
On the date,
Then
on the
let me
date,
allow
on
me
the date,
allow me.
on the day
Wait,
that
okay, you
any
said it
one
don't matter.
person is saved, on the day that any one person is saved, that's it.
That's really stupid, and I don't mean to disrespect
That's
you, especially
cool.
since
I don't feel
especially
disrespected by that because I know you. All I'm telling you is,
I'ma
Diallo,
see you
reach for
face
your
to face.
phone. Reach for your phone.
I'm
Don't
trying
eat
to stay in the
sugar.
realm of
Take
reality.
a picture, Diallo. I'm going to keep a gun.
I'm not
going
trying to
have a
discourage
weapon.
you from keeping a gun. We're
I'm
not
going
talking
to
about
have a
you.
weapon.
We're
That's
not
it.
talking
So
about
what are
that.
we talking about? What are we talking about?
We're
What are we
talking about.
I'm going to have a weapon because I would rather have a weapon than not. The end. That's it.
Again.
That's it.
So can
call
we
it whatever
acknowledge?
you want to call it. Thank you, bro. Call it whatever you want to call it.
Can
I will
we-
have firearms.
We ain't talking
Ain't
about
nothing
you.
to talk about.
We're not talking about you.
Anybody
and
that wants
your
firearms,
irrational
like,
fear.
what am I gonna tell them? Like, you can't have no weapon? Like, I don't like whatever they reason is for wanting to have a weapon, that's what it is.
We're not talking about you. We're talking about and we're discussing for the benefit of ourselves and our listeners. We're discussing the rationale and the reality of gun ownerships and the benefits versus the liabilities of massive gun ownership. And can you acknowledge or do you accept the fact that well over 90% of gun owners will never be in a position to use that weapon to defend or protect the lives of themselves or their youth or their loved ones?
Yep.
Do you understand and are you willing to accept the fact that the vast majority of guns owned by people, the guns that they own will be more likely than not harmed themselves or their loved ones?
Yep.
Do you accept the fact that, or I guess you do, because you already answered the question. So this is my third question.
The end. It ain't nothing you can tell me that's gonna end with me saying
to tell you
a person should not have a firearm. The end.
I'm not trying to get you to because you've been heavily indoctrinated. You've been heavily indoctrinated. All I'm trying to get, all I want from you gun fanatics is simply to acknowledge the reality of what you're advocating for. A lot of times in politics,
what am I advocating for? Owning a firearm? Owning a firearm?
A lot of times. That's what I'm
advocating. Owning a firearm?
A lot of times, you're not just advocating owning a firearm, right? Do you not accept, because in your state, they have blanket gun possession. You can buy a gun without any type of registration, without any type of limits.
That's not true. That's not true.
You forget. Okay. You forget that Google's on deck, don't you?
Bro, Google all you want to. You can't. When I go to a gun show to buy a weapon, they take my ID.
Mississippi has the weakest gun laws in the country, right? Mississippi has the weakest gun laws in the country. The state has none of the foundational gun laws in place and only 3 policies totaling, having the most recently repealed the requirement to get a permit before carrying a concealed gun in public. It also has the single worst rate of gun deaths and has the highest rate of gun homicides in the country. Yep. But as long as you are able to live out your fantasy about one day playing Rambo to protect your family in the most least likely scenario, in less than 1% chance that someone kicks in your front door, because like you said, when you did get burglarized, when I was burglarized, they tend to wait for you to leave your home because that's a burglary. A robbery is when someone engages you directly and takes your shit and you've never been robbed. But because you and many of the other people of your ilk have been so miseducated and indoctrinated into this gun lust, into this gun frenzy, and you have all these delusions, you ignore the facts, you ignore the stats, you ignore the epidemiological and medical realities, and you ignore the torrent, the ocean of black blood, and the morgues full of black bodies, so that you can feed your own personal insecurity of what it feels like to walk the streets naked. I literally hear gun-obsessed people talking about when they don't have their guns, they feel naked. This is Western indoctrination. This is, as one of my homies from back in the day used to say, this is cracker shit. And black people are so caught up in this gun fantasy and this gun delusion that we don't even engage with the facts of the reality. So it don't matter how many, as you said, it don't matter how many black people's bodies are piled up in morgues. It doesn't matter how many black youths are permanently crippled for life, physically and psychologically. I'm going to have my gun. And we can't even begin to discuss, I can't even discuss with you the realities and the true impact of gun ownership in our community and the country as a whole. I can't even discuss rational policies. I can't even discuss the stats because you don't care. Let them all die. Let God sort them out. And that is some very Western white indoctrination that you don't find amongst African people and most other places. And I live on the south side of Chicago, and you sitting there talking about guns as if the gun violence ain't as wild as is worse, as if the gun violence where you are don't outpace here the south side of Chicago.
Bro, you just not listen to what I'm saying. You just said we got the worst incident of gun deaths in the country. That what you just read.
And statistically,
that's what you just read. Bro,
yes.
bro, Diallo, I'm going to own a gun. I'm going to own a few guns.
Why you keep running back to that? So I can't.
Because I don't know what we talking about.
Your indoctrination.
I just don't know what we talking about.
I can't get past your indoctrination. What we're discussing is the community.
I'm not indoctrinated. I'm going to have
you are indoctrinated because listen,
I'm not walking around encouraging anybody else to own weapons. I'm not telling anybody that guns don't need
none
to be
of that's
regulated.
relevant.
All I said is I'm going to own a weapon.
You lack the capacity.
I don't even know why you want to keep arguing with me.
Discussion.
I'm going to own a weapon.
I've never once told you to give up your weapon. I never once told you to give up your weapon. What I would ask you to do, Skipp, what I would ask you to do is not to give up your weapon. What I want you to give up is your delusions. Your delusions and your emotional attachment, your delusions about the level of protection that gun affords you and the impact that gun has on you as an individual, your family as a group, and your community as a whole. I would ask you not to stop being a gun owner. I would ask you to be a conscientious gun owner. And yes, it is demonstrated. Going back to the Brady gun bill, going back to the Clinton administration, coming up to the George W. Bush administration, that sensible gun regulation does reduce and mitigate gun homicides, gun deaths, guns violence, and gun injuries. And for all the talk, but so weapons are to protect us from the government. And see, this redneck shit got us all effed up in the game. And it does disturb me because even if I'm for something, even if I favor something, even if I love and desire and embrace something, if I see it just fucking ravaging my people, I'm going to have to look at it. I can't just comfortably engage in some shit that is ravaging my community and be like, oh, as long as me. That's just not me. That ain't in me. So
what's crazy is the same way that
allow me to finish.
Yesterday, no, absolutely not, Diallo, absolutely not. Because last week when I said the same thing, you twisted the whole argument and turned it into this thing where I'm not being honest and taking everything into account. None of what you said is anything that I've ever said. So I don't even know why my owning a weapon and being thankful that I have weapons when I see, I assume, children walking around with assault rifles hearing about them killing other children with assault rifles, and I feel comfortable having a weapon. I don't know what any of this got to do with anything other than that's what I want to do. And why you turned it into I'm this man that don't want to see firearms regulated or anything, ain't none of that anything I've said. So I don't even know what we talking about.
Okay. As I said, I regrettably have to acknowledge that you are not either prepared for or equipped to have this discussion.
If that's what you want to say to feel better about yourself, that's fine too.
I'm only saying that based on the discussion.
Diallo, I don't have to stand on anything that makes me better than you. All I'm doing is acknowledging that we different. And I'm good with that. So we can get to the points where we agree. You keep trying to find a reason to argue about things that I'm not standing on. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't. If I go to buy a firearm from a dealer, they take my ID, they write everything down, and then I get a gun. It has a number on it. That number is affiliated with me. If I report that gun stolen or not, and that weapon is recovered, they want to know where I was with this gun and why I had reported it stolen. I don't have an issue with that. I don't know what you're talking about, bro. I don't know what you're angry about. All I'm saying is I'm going to have a weapon. So call me whatever name you want to call me, and I'm going to lead with love and say, okay.
Again, one moment you want to talk about it on a personal level. I try to engage it on a personal level when you tell me about some fictional person kicking in your door or some unknown young man walking down the street with a Draco, and I try to engage on that level. And then you're like, well, you can't engage on that level. And then I try to engage the struggle on from a broader scope, and you keep bringing it down personal. And then I say, okay, let's talk about it on a rational, personal sense. And then you want to expand it to the broader scope. I'm just trying to have a reasonable, rational, radical discussion about not just the presence of guns in the Black community, but the Black community's mentality, beliefs, emotional attachment, and the culture around guns in our community. And you keep ranting on about, number one, you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I keep getting these knee-jerk canned responses about, I ain't giving up my gun. Fine. And I've never once said that you should give up your guns. I never once said the community should give up their guns. But I do think that we should not engage the reality of gun ownership and the necessity of gun ownership within the United States. I don't think that that we approach and relate to guns in a way that is best suited to speak to the vulnerabilities and needs of the Black community. We engage guns like these goddamn rednecks out here. Somebody kick in my door, I'll tell them what. But we're not in the same situation. Guns do not mean the same thing for us. And we shouldn't engage with them the same way, because as things stand right now, the medical statistics, the homicide and mortality rates on our community, that the guns in the Black community are more of a liability for the Black community than a benefit or a protectorate. And I think we have to be willing to discuss this and engage with these topics so that we can move from the guns being a liability for the Black community to the guns being a benefit to the Black community. I am a gun owner, but I am not a gun owner because some guy's going to kick in my door or some other young man and the next man tests me or blah, blah, blah. That is ludicrous. That is statistically unlikely. And even if I come into the narrow statistic where a complete stranger comes at me to harm me with their own gun, statistically, it is unlikely that I will ever be in a scenario where my gun will be a proper response, as you say, return fire. This is not an active war zone. And if I start to conduct myself in a way so that I will be at the ready whenever somebody steps to me, I'm ready because I'm on the south side of Chicago. I'm right off King Drive, I'm right off O Block, I'm gonna be ready, then I go from being a defender of my community to being a threat to my community. But whenever you even try to approach this topic, especially black men in particular, who are the most likely to die of gun violence in this country, well beyond, we off the goddamn chart in gun homicides. Whenever you approach this with black men, because of black men's ego, because of our historical vulnerability in this country, I start getting all this, oh, what you talking? You got a gun. And nobody's going to take a step back and say, listen, African bodies are full of bullets and piling up. I worked in trauma centers. I've seen freshly shot bodies, dead and alive. And it bothers me that we're too goddamn comfortable with black people dying wholesale and I got mine type shit. But I'm willing, I say we should move on. And now we got black women shooting black other people in the back of the head. You know, we got guns going off everywhere, every day. And even so-called civilians, people who ain't about that life, now ready to pull up and pull out. And we're celebrating shit that we should mourn. But I'm willing to move on. This is a recorded program. I've had my say. I guess you've had yours. Unless you want to share anything else about your gun enthusiasm. No? We can move on?
I told you that 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Wow. So anyway, speaking of, I did want to speak to, where was that? Where Lee stated that owning a gun doesn't make you a person gun crazy. I agree that owning a gun does not make you gun crazy. But owning a gun with the belief that that gun will protect you in scenarios that, number one, are unlikely to happen. Number two, if they do happen, that the gun can create a higher level of danger for you and those around you than it can to protect you. So what makes a person gun crazy is not simply owning a gun. What makes a person gun crazy is that they believe that this gun is about liberty, that they buy into that rhetoric by the gun industry, that they believe that they're under constant threat and have to be at the constant ready of gun violence, and the other delusions that drive the profitable industry of gun sales in the United States. So when a person buys into the American cowboy myths about gun ownership and what gun ownership means for Black people as a community, that's when I start to say they are ammosexuals or gun nuts. Or when people begin to distort what it means to own a gun and what a gun can do for a family, for an individual, or a community. All right. So now, but moving on to gun crazy, I did want to talk about Mississippi. Oh no, let's not even talk about that. Let's get into, somebody called me. Today's discussion is, before we open the phones, is Gangsters Paradise and Hood Parasites. And I was talking to Geechee and Ball about gangs and the impact of gangs, which is a good segue from the gun discussion. And I was having a discussion about that, and somebody called me Bill Cosby. Somebody said I'm the new Bill Cosby, and that someone also said something that has stuck with me for the past week, is that gangs are a symptom. That gangs are a symptom, not the problem. So I wanted to talk about this gang violence or what some might call, street culture, street crime, thuggery, and things of that nature. Because I see that Black people are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Because we have the state the government, law enforcement, which are racist, genocidal, oppressive state. And then we have on the other side these people who break the law, who oppose, from our point of view, the government. And so we're between these two predatory groups, and we tend to believe that one side is on our side, and that we can that champion us, or at least we have uh, some aligned views and aligned positions with these people because we got the same enemy. So every time I start to talk about the gangs, and then people love to bring, which I think is disrespectful as fuck, they love to bring up Malcolm X and how, oh, Malcolm X was once in the street. Malcolm X this, Malcolm X that. So, that's why I wanted to kind of talk about Gangsters Paradise and gangsterism and Black community, Black culture, and gangs and gangsterism, and this concept of parasitism, the people within our community, within our circles that prey on us, and what should be our response, our position, our level of solidarity with the streets.
Well, I don't know who would call you Bill Cosby. I mean,
They said I was basically reiterating the pound cake speech.
yeah, I just, whatever. That's just nonsensical. Like, I just don't, I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would say that. And I think a while ago, like this was many years ago, Diallo, you were talking about the way that people in revolutionary circles romanticize criminals, and talking about the ways that we think, um, we we are just so focused on, like, if we just let people out of prison, they will be the new revolutionaries and do all of this amazing stuff, and there isn't anything to support that. And I think I'm really, I definitely understand, and probably I'll use a word that we use now in these spaces. I definitely think that I'll unite with that position. I think it's just really, I think it is trying to see the good in folks in our community. I just think that we got to be a little bit more discerning about how we get there. And I don't know. And I say that as a person who grew up definitely affiliated with gangs in real ways. Can look at people that were, gang members, and recognize, the good and the importance that that person had in my life, and recognize that, like, those men of my youth are long gone. I don't necessarily know if we are at a point where, even when we talk about gangs, it's something my little brother said in a meeting one time that I thought was just, like, really powerful. He said gangs aren't about what you can start, it's about what they can stop. And I can't think of anything that a gang can stop in any situation, which goes back into that Bobby Wright conversation, right? Where the only contradiction is there is no contradiction. Like with the gang, you can tell and still be affiliated with the gang. You can, shoot up an old lady house and be affiliated with the gang. You can, like, there are really no rules. And one of the things that we often talk about when we're sitting around reflecting on our youth and the difference in the gangs that we were around and the gangs that kind of exist now, even though we often talk about there aren't really any gangs now because they don't have any structure, right? Like, anybody can do anything at this point, and that's the exact opposite of what the gangs that I was around as a youth were signified by. right? Like I don't know anybody that I could refer to as a gang leader, right? Like I, which is strange to have a gang, but there is no leadership structure in place. Um,
The gangs
so
have a
yeah,
leader, but they do have a leader.
oh,
All
tell me
gangs
about that.
do. Well, I'll ask you this question: who's the leader of capitalism?
Oh no,
Exactly. Like, who could you persuade or take out in order to affect the trajectory of the capitalist system?
Joe Q consumer.
So it's the same thing. In fact, I'll ask you an even more specific question: who's the leader of the United States?
On paper, it's the president.
Well, okay, let's get off the paper. In the real world, in the operational sense.
The president.
Okay. All right, got to take you back
Like
to fifth grade
ultimately,
civics. No, let me
no.
tell
I
you,
mean,
no.
Diallo, hold on. Let me say this, bro. Listen,
Uh,
I think we have a really good relationship, and I'm just gonna be real, like transparent. I don't really know, like if you've had a rough day or something, but you
mm.
seem really mean spirited,
I
and
don't
I don't
mean to
have to
be.
do
It's
if that's what you want.
okay.
No, well, I can take it as a joke. So what I'm saying is, typically when you say things, I can hear it and laugh and chuckle and know that you're being funny. But if that's not what you want, you can do it by yourself, and we can just check in when we see each other, and then figure out if we want to keep doing it. Because I told you before, I'm real sensitive to that disrespect. So like, I
Okay.
don't know if that's what you was doing or not, but I'm saying that's how I took it. So let's not do that if we want to keep. If you want me to keep doing this, and it's no threat or nothing. It's just where I am right now. Like
I
I just don't.
understand.
I just didn't feel like that was a nice thing to do.
Okay. I understand. But I'll go back. Let me just answer more directly. The president is not the United States, the leader of the United States. The Constitution is what leads the United States. The written law, and around written law, there are certain practices and traditions that are not written but encoded, and they are called generally practices or precedents. That's what dictates the United States. And even the president is subordinate to that. So when we
Hey, look
talk
here,
about
Paul Franklin. Look here, Paul Franklin. Excuse me, Diallo. Look here, Paul Franklin. All this, we not gonna take no disrespect, bro. Like, and you can type it up and you can do whatever it is that you want, but that's not what I do. We gonna talk. And if you don't want to talk, that's fine. I don't have to be here. I don't have to be here. I'm here to learn. I'm here to participate. I will count Diallo as one of my brothers. I will count him as being a very good friend of mine. But this man up and defend your position. First off, I don't have to defend no position. I don't. I'm not a leader. I'm a participant. I don't have to do nothing. And I don't do this stuff that y'all do, bro. I don't get on here and argue with people and go back and forth. I'm gonna say what I gotta say. When Diallo shows me something that makes me think differently about a thing, I will gladly say I didn't see it that way. You're right. But we're not gonna do all that, bro. And I don't really know what I don't know what y'all on that arguing and being mean to each other is the way. But when I'm in these communities where I leave with love and I get love back. And maybe that's why you don't get the traction that you might want in your community, because you just not leading with love. So let's not do that. I'm sorry, Diallo.
That's all right. So, in the terms of, because I've heard this, I've seen this in action where a lot of people, I've only been in Chicago a little over a decade, and a lot of people who talk about the lack of leadership in the gangs, and they even talk about, the whole Jeff Fort and the other, incarcerated gang leaders. They often lament the fact that these men are incarcerated, and that if these men were released, somehow there would be more structure and hierarchy. But what I think they fail to recognize, that whether there is a formal hierarchy or an identifiable leader, or if it is like it here in Chicago, without any type, like every single gang or street organizations, as they like to call them here for some reason, um, even they start to fragment and subgangs and subgangs. But the reality is their fundamental mission, their fundamental goals, their fundamental values haven't changed with or without formal leadership. And even when there was formal leadership, as we saw with Tukey Williams, when the founders or the leaders make a pivot that goes away from the fundamental principles, the fundamental objectives, the fundamental methodology, the fundamental constitution of the gangs, the leaders are ousted, ignored, or just put up as figureheads that have no authority. It's even when, like, even the president of the United States, when John F. Kennedy went against the intelligence apparatus and he sought to start to dismantle the imperial structure, he was a warmonger. But because of his own ego and embarrassment with the Bay of Pigs, and he said he's going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces, and he started saying some things he didn't have to say, you saw what happened to him. So most of these entrenched organizations, or these entrenched institutions, there's really the people, the individuals, where they're at the top. The people at the top or the leaders are just as interchangeable and disposable as the foot soldiers at a certain point. So the gangs still have a leader. The leader of black gangs is capitalism and the trinkets and rewards and empty promises of material accumulation in capitalism. And regardless of what.
No. I was saying, yeah. I mean, like, I definitely agree. I definitely understand the point. You know, larger than the grand. I definitely understand the point. It's just, there's a guy. I'll say his name, because he says, and when he talks here, he said he described himself as a leader of a gang, and, you know, going to prison, and what it meant to do that. At a particular point, there were things that could have happened in his community that people went to him and said, "Hey, we don't want that to happen." And things like that were stopped. Now, that doesn't mean that the dope got stopped being sold. That don't mean that people still didn't get injured or hurt. Like, none of those things are true. But I do think there's a thing that occupies that space where, unfortunately, people are going to do things that people are going to do. I just kind of don't understand. I just don't understand. I want to better understand your point around what was happening when Larry Hoover was on the streets versus what's happening now, and there not being much of a difference. Like, I would like for you to kind of, like, talk through that point a little more.
Well, we'll know. I think even despite the 24-hour news cycle, the rates of violence were higher in the 90s than they are now. The gun violence and the rates of violence when I was in high school, when I was a teen, when there was formal hierarchy. In fact, in the neighborhood I came up with, in the housing project that I lived in, and even when I went to college and I was living in Brooklyn, there were it was kind of a non-hierarchical system. There were a bunch of loosely affiliated crews, and when the top-down formal structure came in, when the gangs got corporatized, the violence was more intensified, and it was more directed violence. It was less violence about, when the violence initially in my neighborhood, we literally used to fight over who could play at the prime basketball spots. You know, we lived in this housing project, and this basketball court kind of fed into two different neighborhoods, and we used to scrap and slap box over who could get the best basketball. But when in the 80s, when crack cocaine entered the picture, and real money and resources came into this, and it was formally, the violence was not just about slap boxing over what party or club or basketball court or hangout spot you could claim for your neighborhood. It literally came about, systematically locking down territory, systematically gathering and defending clientele, trade, literally routes of trade, and the drug trade. So I think it is an illusion. It is kind of like a nostalgic thing that we have. Well, back in the day, things were better. When there were, I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying that many people are like, well, now it's just the Wild West. But even when it was more corporatized, when it had a gang CEO or a head, that violence was directed, and they had very, very sophisticated means of punishment, of recruitment, of retaliation. So having lived and had to endure, gang infested, I'll say that, gang infested communities, I really, from my own experience and from my research, I really don't see how having more established or formal hierarchies or leadership within the gangs would translate into less violence. You're on mute. You're muted.
Yeah, because the baby's talking to me. Yeah, I'm sorry, the
Oh,
baby's talking to me. I haven't researched it to the point that you have, right? But one of the things that I'll say is that I was listening to this guy on Fresh Air, I think it was a couple days ago, and he was writing he wrote a book about the crack epidemic. It's anyhow, I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, it was definitely on NPR. But what he was talking about was how, in the 80s and early 90s, crack was the drug of choice, right? And from that crack, from the crack epidemic, they then came back in, and then marijuana went up. So basically, like, a lot of people were smoking crack when we were children, but then we didn't smoke crack, right? Thank the Lord. But
Scissor.
what they were, yeah, but what they were talking about, well, downers don't make you act like that, really. But what I've thought about a lot was, someone else put in the chat that, like, violence is down nationwide, but also they funny, but also this idea that those people that were doing that, fighting over those particular territories and trade ways and things that you were just discussing, like, the violence was definitely tied to that. But when that kind of stopped being the case, is just somehow different now, and I don't really know what that thing is. And if you have a way, to kind of make sense of what I just said, then go ahead. But yeah, like, that's a thing that I didn't really, I don't really understand it, because I also think I think this. I also think that when we talk about gangs in the way that I am hearing the term and thinking about it, it was definitely a lot. It was really active, and in certain, it's pretty certain that the the structure around gangs, as I saw them as a child during that time, was still pretty structured. And I remember it being violent, but I also definitely don't remember the sheer amount of violence that happens in communities by young people. Like recently, like it's like young people are just really um like it is a lot of spillover into things and just kind of get into places that things wouldn't have happened before and and not not directly tied to the incidences of like crimes that impact, for a lack of a better word, civilians. Because that is what my buddies would call people that went to work every day, civilians. Um, yeah, that. Thank you, Lee Clinton. Violence was typically impacting like non-civilians in ways that right now I just don't kind of see it happening. Like
I
death,
disagree.
yeah, okay, death and murder, in Jackson is still typically a thing that happens between criminals and people that know each other, right? But not like it's like, and again, somebody can pull up 40 things that contradict what I'm saying and maybe seem wrong, and I'm okay with that. But I don't hear a lot of people that are going to work every day and coming home every day being afraid of being killed
Wow.
as much as they are afraid of being robbed or burglarized by youngsters, not like the death that we're seeing in other things.
But robbery is violence, though. That's classified as a violent crime. If you rob if you rob someone, you are classified in the system as a violent criminal. So that is an act of violence. Um, but I think in the 80s and 90s, I think that the violence. I think now we're able to. As you had mentioned, we kind of romanticize the past, like the gangsters of the 90s and the 80s only went after other gang members, and it was only practical violence to secure territory. There were killings based on ego, based on vengeance, based on nothing more than thrill killing, set tripping and banging over colors, gang banging over colors. But at that time as well, which I don't think we want to pay attention to, the access to guns in many cities, New York City, and other areas in the so-called liberal North, the guns were. Oh, well, Skipp is gone. Let's take him till he comes back. The guns were. Oh, he's back. There were stricter gun regulations. And in the time of stricter gun regulations, assault weapons bans under the Brady Bill, under the Clinton administration, gun violence went down across the board. And after George Bush, since those bills were written and they had to be reinstituted or recertified, George Bush he didn't repeal the gun regulations, but he allowed them to expire. And then came about a series of Supreme Court judgments brought by the gun lobby to further liberalize and open access to guns. There is a direct statistical rise in gun violence and the quality in terms of the capacity, magazine capacity, the level. I remember when I was a kid, everybody in the streets had basically a 38 special, and it was revolvers. Most of the guns I had, and if you really gonna be a gun dude, you would have like a 357 Magnum revolver. My friends in the streets, they all wanted a 357, 357, six shot, but now these automatic, semi-automatic, clip loaded, extended clips, drum clips, that shit just wasn't around. So there is a question of motives and motivation to kill, and what do they call means and opportunity, and the quality and amount of hardware that is now available to them. So there are several factors, but one thing has remained consistent across the board for black gangs is the areas which they exercise their power or their predation, and the people who are the primary victims of their predation, regardless of the hierarchies and structures, regardless of the homicide rates. And there is no gang that I have ever encountered that did not prey upon the so-called civilian population, because I've never saw a gang that only limited its violence, its attacks, its harms to other gang members or rival gang members. Every single gang that I name, their main source of revenue and their main levels of influence comes from the level of intimidation and exploitation they can exercise from the masses. And I've never seen so this myth that, oh yeah, they just keep it amongst the gangs. I really don't see that. And I've never encountered that situation.
And again, maybe it's because I was younger that wasn't what I noticed.
Who did the gangs in your community sell drugs to?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's just what I just see it as a way that things are. Like,
did they sell it to other gang members or sell it to members
they sold
of the
to people that
community?
want to do drugs.
Who and when, let's say a gang in Mississippi secures territory, right? Because where I'm from, there was a time where even the ministers, where even the community leaders had to wear neutral colors as they navigated a community. There was a time where I literally grew up. There was this neighborhood store called Mama Dale's, and it was this elderly black couple. And when I was a kid, you walk in the store, it was like a neighborhood community store. And by the time, from the time I was in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, by the time I was in high school, this same store looked like a fortress. It had a brick and bulletproof glass divider between the products and produce and the community. And you had to walk in, you could only go into this little boxed in area in the front, and you had to point out to the person what you wanted. And they put it behind this giant thick box, and you put the money in. So if the gangs only limited, and many of the businesses, the black-owned small businesses in my community went from looking like normal civilian stores to literally looking like, I mean, even they were more fortified than banks. And all they were doing was selling hot pickles and candy. So I think I don't see everywhere I see the gangs, I see evidence of civilians or their fears and their precautions, just their delusions. So no, I think that the main target of gangs are the masses, because the gangs, less than 5% of any population, even in the areas with the highest level of gang activity and gang engagement, it's always 90% or more, 95% or more of the population ain't involved in that shit. But I see the way that gangs literally shaped from going into schools and with metal detectors. I'm old enough to have gone to school without a metal detector. My son goes through schools and the metal detector. So I'm not sure how we ever got around to concluding that gangs did not prey upon or impact so-called civilians, that their main impact was on other gang members in terms of violence and other harms.
I mean, like, okay, like when it's couched that way, okay. Again, I'm just saying, in my lived experience, like, Red Rooster didn't really turn into
fortified.
Yeah, it was not fortified at any point. And I just think our lived experience in this instance is just slightly different, you know. But yeah.
But per capita, Mississippi has higher rates of gang violence and homicide than Chicago.
Yeah,
per capita.
Yeah, right. Definitely per capita. But I think it's also one of those things where, again, you can, if you and I, one of the things that they recently passed like a few years ago was this gang bill. And essentially, one of the things that like people really got upset about, especially black people, was like they were like, wait a minute, if I hang out with my buddies and wear Greek paraphernalia, we could be classified as a gang because of the way that the laws were written. I don't necessarily know if I would take the state seriously in talking in taking the data that they report about gang violence and gang crimes, because most of the criminals that I know do not. Well, you actually can. I mean, somebody on the internet said that Chicago was Mississippi with coats, and I definitely think there is definitely something there. There's definitely a connection between the two places. But I think, yeah, I just think it's just a difference that pops up. That I don't know if I would take the state seriously in their reporting of how much gang crime we have. Because again, talking with criminals, they don't seem to think that there are gang issues at all.
Well, there's two things I need the community to really memorize. If you don't take anything else away from this discussion, the first thing I want you to realize is that the issue of criminals is not relevant to black people. The system criminalizes all black people. There have been way too many law abiding, civil, well mannered black men and women who have become victims of incarceration or being targeted by the state without breaking any laws. So I don't want the illusion that we are not aware, that we are not aware that the fact that in this country under white hegemony and capitalism, blackness itself has been criminalized. And it is not the fault of any gangbangers. Before any gang member was ever initiated into a gang, before any formal black gang was ever formed in the United States, that was the reality. From slavery to Jim Crows with the vagrancy laws, black people have been criminalized and demonized by the state. And I will go so far as to say, for any black person, you cannot be lawful, a respecter of the law, and a revolutionary. Now, I'm not saying go out and engage in open and willing law breaking, but if you begin to conduct yourself in a way that threatens the status quo, you are a criminal, even if you don't break the law. And the state becomes criminal. The state breaks its own laws in order to neutralize threats to the status quo. So you can open a lawful business. And if you start to succeed in a lawful business, but you conduct and structure that business in a way that contradicts the economic principles and values of capitalism, they will subvert that business. So the law in this situation is not what we should adhere to. But here's the difference between a revolutionary who is a criminal. Every revolutionary is a criminal, even if you obey the law, because revolution is illegal, even if it's not written through the practices. We know from COINTELPRO, the Palmer raids, and that ain't even just for black people. We've seen white folks wrongfully incarcerated, wrongfully executed, wrongfully blackjacketed, false flags where they would, going all the way back before black folks, the Black Panthers, the first Panthers were even born. They go all the way back to that time where they would set off bombs and blame it on anarchists and lock up and deport anarchists illegally. So that's the thing. But here's the difference between a gangster and a revolutionary. A revolutionary breaks or violates the law for a collective political purpose. Revolutionaries disrespect, disregard, violate, or dismiss the law in order to serve a collective political goal. A criminal breaks the law for an individualized economic goal. Their primary motivation is individual and economic. The primary motivation for a revolutionary is collective and political. That is the divergence. So I'm not sitting here, I don't condemn gangs or any other type of predatory criminals. That's the difference between a predator and a revolutionary. That's the first thing you have to remember. I will never, ever condemn a black person for breaking laws in the United States. I will only condemn a black person if their law breaking does more harm to the collective than benefit to the collective. If they prey on the collective. Neely Fuller said, black people are under no obligation to this system because this system is invalid. This system has no just power over us. All of its power is illegitimate and through violence and force. So you have every right to flaunt the law as you see fit as a black individual or organization. But one thing you do not have a right to do is heap more harm and pain on other victims. So as long as you don't target other victims of white domination, you're free to engage or violate white domination as you see fit. And the second thing I have to remind black people of, that number 2, is that gangs are not enemies of the state. Gangs are assets of the state. Wherever you find gangs, not just black street gangs, where you find Italian mafia, where you find the Yakuza, where you find the cartels, every single formula, whether you find even the gangs, the Islamic gangs, wherever you find these gangs, you find 2 things. They all have deep-seated relationships with the CIA or some other active intelligence apparatus, number 1. Number 2, their primary victims are their own people. Since the mid-90s up till now, we've been having a war on terror. And nobody ever tells people in the United States the primary victim of the so-called war on terror and these roving bands of Islamic gangsters are other Muslims. We always talk about black on black violence, but the primary victims of the Yakuzas, the primary victims of the cartel, the primary victims of La Cosa Nostra are their own damn people. I don't know of any gang anywhere in the world that has carried out more directed violence or harm against the state or the oppressors of the people than they carried out against their own people. Gangs, wherever you find them, we have found consistently, they are assets of the state, not enemies of the state. Those are the 2 things you need to remember. This distinction between a revolutionary and a predator, because they're both unlawful, they're both illegal. And where do the gangs stand in their relationship to the government?
Ain't nothing I can say to that, brother. When you right, you right. You know what I'm saying? Talk that talk, brother.
Right. And I wish we could grasp that because there's so much rhetoric. Somebody said to me that gangs are a symptom of oppression and racism. I don't accept that as true, and here's why. When you deal with
Can you restate that again? Can you say that again? Because I think I missed it.
While I was condemning gangs and gangsterism, someone said that gangs are a symptom of racism and oppression and poverty, that they are a symptom. But what we fail to do, if we go into because again, we are the rational radicals, we go to the root. You can't just give us a surface explanation. But if we look, you have 2 types of outcomes. You have intentional and unintentional. There was a whole book written by this guy named Chalmers Johnson, where he talks about the U.S. empire and the U.S. intelligence apparatus, where they will go out to try to have an outcome. And they will do this thing in order to make this thing happen. But then they say you have intended outcomes and intended consequences, and you have unintended consequences. And the unintended consequences are called blowback. And so the system intends to keep black people in a subordinate state of oppression for the purposes of exploitation by the majority. That is the agenda. There are intended consequences and unintended consequences. One of the unintended consequences of subordinating and oppressing Black people through racism and other tactics is that Black people can be radicalized. Black people can develop revolutionary and radical thinking, ideology, culture, and organizations. They don't want that. One of the intended and understood consequences, which goes across the world, is gangsterism. The government, the state, intentionally cultivates and propagandizes oppressed population in order to feed and push forward gangsterism because of what I stated earlier, that the primary target of gangs are their own population. I don't know of any gang that looked outside of the vulnerable population. That popular song, Gangster's Paradise. Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. What is a gangster's paradise? Has anybody asked? Let me tell you what a gangster's paradise is. A community that is isolated, a community that lacks proper resources, a community that lacks the ability to self-govern and self-police, a community that has been subjected to substandard education, substandard medical care, substandard resources. Why is that a gangster's paradise? Is because that population is vulnerable, where you can literally recruit from, train, and then retarget that same community. Whereas if those same gangsters, I remember there was gang violence all over the neighborhood here in South Chicago. And then there was a high profile gang shooting on the Gold Coast. While this young man by the name of FBG Duck was killed in an affluent, wealthy, white area because he was a rapper and he had rap money. So he went to the Gucci store and he went to these high-end shops on the Gold Coast. And on the Gold Coast in Chicago, all of these high-end merchant shops have secret entrances and exit for high-profile people. So if you're a Saudi Arabian oligarch or Saudi Arabian prince, or if you're some Hollywood celebrity and you're in Chicago and you want to go drop a few racks at these Gucci stores, you can enter and exit the store through a place where the people on the street don't have access to you. Well, he went in through through the main entrance, and he approached the retail people and said, listen, I want, because he was well-known, famous recording artist, said, let me in through the celebrity or through the high profile. He had just spent several $1,000s in there. He had saw that there was some level of risk to going out the main entrance because his location was made public because he was shopping for his son. And so, long story short, he asked them, hey, let me use the secret entrance that you allow the high profile clients to come in. They said, no, go out the main entrance. He went out the main entrance and he was killed. Within a month of that killing, the group that had done it, and this is a city with I think less than a 20% homicide clearance rate, they decapitated. For the first time, there was one of the most high and up until including some of the people who were involved in that hit committed suicide because they saw the walls closing in. And they basically literally obliterated that faction that did that. Not because they committed a homicide, but they committed a homicide on the Gold Coast. And we saw the level of resources, and it's just no different than that submarine. Thousands of Black people are drowning to death in the Mediterranean. And Latin American refugees, Central and Latin American and Caribbean refugees are literally being drowned on the southern border in the Gulf of Mexico. They're being drowned, but white folks in a submarine who voluntarily get in the water, all the resources go there. So that shows you the problem is not the gangs. The official policy of the Chicago Police Department on gangs is to contain the problem, not to stop it, not to reverse it, but to make sure it remains in the area. And for by and large, that is that's sustained. Like where I live, you have O Block is here, and the university, Ivy League, a University of Chicago is right here. It's right here, and nobody crosses that line. It's insane. So the gangs, and final point, reiterate, gangs are assets of the state. They're not enemies of the state.
Yeah, I think we get there. I think we get there differently, but yeah, we definitely agree with all of that. We
And I
definitely
am
unite.
saying that gangs are a byproduct of imperialism and capitalism, but they're an intended byproduct of it. That's my point is we're under the illusion that somehow the government is against gangs. Somehow the government is struggling and fighting to stop the gangs. Somehow, if you are, we should side with the gangs. If you're against the government, then the gang's revolutionary but gangster. That the government's somehow, I would challenge anyone. If you want me to change my conclusions, tell me or articulate to me any large agenda of the capitalist, any agenda of the imperialist, any agenda of the racist, any agenda of the state that any formal or informal gang has challenged, even if they don't attack it, ideologically. Tell me how the mission and methods of the gangs diverge from the mission and methodology of our oppressors.
I think that's a fair question.
Because and when you say gangs are a symptom, we have to say they are an intended consequence, not an unintended consequence. So the presence and expansions of gangs in our community and our children being recruited into the gangs and the criminal lifestyle is a win for the government, not a loss. So because we don't understand, I understand symptoms. But when you go to the core of it, did the state intend and want this outcome, or is this an outcome they opposed or they tried to avert or avoid? Which outcome?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting is like when you're talking like this, it is definitely arriving at a shared conclusion through a different route. Right? Like I definitely have always thought, it's really interesting. A good buddy of mine, rest his soul, brother named Nathan, was one of the first guys that I knew was a vice lord. And by knew meaning like had a relationship with, like interacted with him. And it was just so interesting to hear things about that nation that I did not know anything about, right? And one of the things that he talked about, and there's a documentary on it. I think the name of the show was like the Conservative Vice Lords, and they were doing like a lot of community organizing work, and the state kind of worked to shut that down. And pivot that into a different direction. And a lot of those, especially Chicago gangs in particular, got a lot of that war on poverty money to do things. And I think them getting access to the war on poverty money proves your point. You know what I'm saying? Like that wasn't it. And then when you look at, one of the things that I've been told here in Jackson in particular, I did not grow up knowing anything about Crips or Bloods. That's not our gang tree. In my lived experience, somebody again can come on here and prove it, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. But the reason I think about that is because when I would be, doing the learning and in the communities, learning from, people that I would call my elders, they would be bringing in people from the West Coast that would talk about the ways that essentially Crips kind of were an outgrowth of the Black Panther Party in a real way. And then from that, it kind of got like, hey, we can get money, and then the Crips became the Crips. And I just always thought that was really interesting, how we kind of arrive at those conclusions.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because Malcolm X kind of articulated that too. You know, one of my favorite quotes from Malcolm X is, "We had a good thing going until the gangs came and messed it up." He said the other word that I'm gonna repeat, but he said we had a good thing until thugs and knuckleheads came and messed it up. So a lot of times, even with revolutionary organizations, I see people that found and organize um, in the community, and many of those organizations are very vulnerable or susceptible to degrading into cults or gangs. Many, and I think that's because there's an anti-intellectual strand where people don't understand the value of ideology. You know, you got a lot of people hanging with all that talking, so you have a lot of enthusiastic and well-intended individuals that come together to fight to accomplish a goal, but they don't do the necessary ideological. I mean, I think one of the few public figures that understood this so in depth was Chairman Fred Hampton. You can't just simply take an angry black man who hates the honky and give him a gun, because that young man can be persuaded in many other ways. So the ideological and academic work, that's why I think even though the Panthers, instead of being turned, had to be basically obliterated, because every biography, every speech, every time I encounter a Panther, whether ones that are ancestors or adjacent, they say long before you could get your hand on a gun, you had to read a series of books. The Panthers had a very clear line, and that line was an ideological line. It wasn't strictly the white man messing with us, so we're gonna mess with them. Kwame Ture, and people forget. I mean, we look so much at the berets, and a lot of people were talking about the Panthers had guns. The Panthers had guns in the first part of tonight's discussion, but they don't. Nobody ever refers to what was the Black Panther reading list. Why were they distributing, in order to raise money, Mao's Little Red Book? What's in that book? What is sinocentrism? Why? I mean, the Panthers was founded by academics, and everyone who was who desired or wanted to rise in the ranks of the Panthers had to engage with those academics. Bobby Seale was an engineer. Dr. Huey P. Newton studied law. I mean, Kwame Ture was a med student.
Yeah, and they was getting down too. And I think that's one of the things that's so different is that, you know, at this point, the tough part is the part that's central and not the learn part. Because Huey was a law student, you know, like they was at Merritt College, but Huey was known to get down too. And I think those things can occupy the same space. I think ultimately, because of the way that we really want to center the thug in American lexicon, because that's what we do. Like that's who we, you know, the villain, the criminal is an American hero. Yeah. So
we mimic white people in that. American gangsters. As Khalid Muhammad said, America venerates its killers. You know, if you are a white person and you want to be erased from white history, if you want to guarantee as a white man you never get a statue, you never show up on currency, you never get a museum named after you, be humane. Be humane. If you want something named after you, you want statues, you want a holiday in your name, be a mass killer. Be a mass killer. Now, there were good white people. There's never going to be a Smedley Butler Day. Smedley Butler is one of the most decorated soldiers in U.S. history. And he turned around and said, listen, war is a racket. U.S. imperialism is inhumane, unjust, and it hurts both people, foreign people, and citizens. Smedley Butler has been erased. He was a Rambo before Rambo, and he's erased from their history. You know, and the line just goes on and on. I've had an opportunity to talk to Harvard-educated historians, top white historians, U.S. historians in the country. And I just start asking them names of white radicals, white anarchists, white socialists, white freedom fighters. And they know John Brown. And after that, it all breaks down. So, but now black people, that Snow or Snowfall, American Gangsters, we went from, venerating our heroes, true freedom fighters, to venerating parasites. Venerating parasites. Rick Ross. Why the hell is Rick Ross going on a nationwide tour? Why was Rick Ross able to come to the DuSable Museum? Now, I don't mean the rapper. I mean the CIA asset. The chemical warfare agent. Why the hell was he able to come to my community and sell out? Speaking engagements. What the fuck? Since when? We are so indoctrinated. I don't even hear people talk about brainwashing anymore. In order to be called brainwashed in this arena, in this mental time, in this cultural epoch, you have to literally like bleach your skin, wear blind contacts, and get on the internet and say, I want to be white. Because that you got to go to that extreme. Because the white indoctrination, the Urugu value system, the Western cultural assembly is so deeply ingrained, we don't even recognize. We got black people out here that swear they're pro-black and down for us. We got a prominent black leader that's doing a public talk and going on a public tour with David Duke, and he's still seen as a militant black leader. Yes, David Duke.
Who is doing this?
The irritated genie. The angriest, most pro-black man that ever blacked.
Don't talk about him. I don't want y'all to get sued.
But can we open it up?
Let's do it. Ultimately,
I blame Tupac. Let me just throw that dig in there.
Hey, boy, listen, boy.
It's all Tupac's fault.
Do not talk bad about, you know what I'm saying, the patron saint of thuggery.
My problem is not Tupac being a thug.
Hey, listen,
my problem is not thug life. That's not my problem with Tupac. My problem with Tupac is that he didn't start it, but Tupac created the illusion that there was a ability, that we are able or capable of marrying black consciousness, black revolutionary consciousness, and thug identity. This revolutionary but gangster. It was later carried on. This fallacy was given even more shape with RBG, with Dead Prez, revolutionary but gangster. I think it didn't start with Tupac. It was gone on even back in the early stage of the 60s, and the revolutionaries were black revolutionaries, and even Farrakhan, who's almost 90 now, was spewing that fallacy that gangs are frontline soldiers and every black gang member is just one step away from being an armed guerrilla.
Yep.
And all you got to do is to turn the gangs from predatory street group organizations to revolutionary guerrilla factions. Is that they're one term. But we've seen
all you gotta read is the autobiography of Malcolm X, and then like they out of here. And,
but that is a lie, that is a myth, and it is a deadly myth, because we've seen all over the world, from South Africa to the Gaza Strip to Haiti to Jamaica. We've seen all over in black and non-black areas that when there is a societal collapse, where there is a systemic collapse, or there is intensified pressure and exploitation and attacks from the top, the gangs, there's no historical example where the gangs en masse have turned to from preying on the community to fighting for the community. What we find, calling me, man, people mad disrespect. What we find is that when instability hits and more intensified, is that gangs are opportunists. They intensify their exploitation of the community. The gangs in Haiti watched the UN troops come in and sexually exploit their country. The gangs in Haiti watched the UN come in and contaminate the water, create infectious disease epidemics. They sat there, and we didn't hear or read about any. Now we know the lava lost, and there are revolutionary and radical factions in Haiti, but they have to fight the gangs as much as they have to fight the imperialists. But the moment that the gangs saw that as an opportunity to secure more territory and intensify the exploitation. But anyway, if you want to open it up.
Let's do it, bro. They somebody asked real early in the conversation. They was like, when I get to call in. So man, let's get these folks on here because they've been so great. They've been so great the last few weeks, man. I love it. You know
check the link if you want to come on live, or you can type in your question or comment or criticism. I've responded to some. I want to give an appreciation and a shout out to Danzel Caldwell for his contribution of $5. States that most gun owners don't make training a part of their lifestyle. De-escalation, stop the bleed, poly ed, a political ed to understand why they carry. I instruct, by the way. I totally agree and unite with this. And this is my position, that every individual that arms themselves in our community, as their obligation to the community is arm themselves consciously in the community. I would never do anything to take away anything from any African to defend themselves. But like the brother said, you got to train, not just train in the use of your arm, but train in de-escalation. And that has gotten me through more than a few conflicts here in Chicago and in New York and in Kansas City. Just de-escalation, an ego checking, stop the bleed, political education and understanding. And I'm also a gun owner. So I appreciate the contribution and the insights. Now, this is something that really annoys me. I'm not left, right, or middle. I'm a free thinker. If you're not, what I always find is that these people who say they're not left, right, or middle, they always fall to the right. And I don't know how on the ideological spectrum, what are you? Because if you're a free thinker, what type of policies, positions do you advocate for?
The boys and I were talking this morning, and Miles Garvey, I can't remember what he asked me about, but whatever it was like, you know, something about white people and being racist. And I was telling him how, you know, black people can't be racist and all white people are racist, just like all men are sexist. Okay. Yeah. Miles Garvey just said that was August. Okay, so we were talking about it. And I often think about that, you know, like foundationally. And I know we go back and forth about this, but something that's in scripture was like, you are either a gatherer or a scatterer unto the Lord. You are either doing things to bring people to Christ or you are running people away from it. And I think the same is true for what we want to see in our communities. I think you are either against capitalism or for it. Right. And if you are not actively for black people, you are either actively or passively against black people. There is no middle. You cannot operate in a safe space. You have to be all the way because of the way
there's no neutral position, right?
You cannot be neutral to oppression.
I appreciate C. Mills who set world from the point. You're either left or right. Centrism is right wing, so you're either left or right. Tina states that so are gangs and capitalism one and the same? Capitalism is an economic system, but all gangs are capitalist. I don't know of any non-capitalist gang. Because if a gang stops engaging in capitalistic prices, extractory, how do they qualify? They wouldn't qualify as a gang. They would become a revolutionary organization, and they would get instead of getting the support of the state, they will fall under the ire.
Yeah,
so if you got a bunch of armed men together, organized armed men, and they are not engaged in capitalist practice, how can they be a gang? So all gangs are capitalist, but not all capitalism is gang related. You have some state capitalism, you have capitalist organizations, institutions, corporations, and things of that nature. So gangs can just be thrown on that pile of capitalist formations. You have several capitalist formations. Some people might say all capitalist formations engage in gangsterism. So, you know, gang formation is a way to execute or engage or carry out capitalist agendas in practice.
Diallo, I just sent you a private. Let's put a question from B Radical 08. I don't know if other people are in, but I just put it in a private chat.
Okay. What 5 books do you recommend? Yeah. Okay, I'll let you start. What 5 books do you recommend for developing a revolutionary framework?
Autobiography of Malcolm X, Asada, Blood in My Eye, Ready for Revolution, Black Power. And Black Power is Kwame Ture and Mike Thelwell. No, Charles Hamilton and
Blueprint for Black Power. G-Rock, stay on the line. I'll get you on just as soon as I run down my list of 5. Just out of solidarity, I'll say first the myth and propaganda of black buying power. Just so you
on the cool though.
Yes, so I will have to put that as number 1. I'm gonna have to come with some white authors, simply because
you hate black people.
Know thy enemy, know thyself.
No,
since you said all black books, I would definitely say In Game Volume 1 by Derrick Jensen. I would have to say the Communist Manifesto. There's several books by Chalmers Johnson and Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And I'm only saying white authors because you named some really good black books, and I just so I'm just coming just to be contrarian. So
that Confessions of an Economic Hitman, boy.
So
So
know thy enemy. There's some white snitches out there telling white folks business, and white folks, believe it or not, study us intensely. So one thing I find a lot of black people that become revolutionary and conscious, I'm not saying you can't get everything you need from black folks, but if you're truly revolutionary, one thing about a revolutionary is building up black people. But the other half of being a black revolutionary is subverting our enemies, undermining and subverting and thwarting. Love that word, thwarting our enemies. So I just to be contrary. I know some people gonna be mad at me, but anyway, let's get G-Rock. He's waited patiently. Welcome to the Rational Radical Show. You got questions, comment, or criticism, G-Rock?
I don't want to speak on the Bloods and Crystals here in LA. I was born and raised here, South Central, all my life, still out here. Currently in Compton right now. I just want to say that, I've been here since 1969. My mother came out here from Alabama. And it's out here, it's actually getting worse. It got worse out here, man. I don't know why I'm still here, but I'm still living here raising my kids. So, but it's like Chris was the offspring of the Panthers in '69 because Bunchy Carter, baby brother, Kenny Carter, is the original Eastside Crip. So it started from him, Raymond Washington, and Tookie them. So, but I guess as somewhere down the line, I guess it turned backwards because now the people of the community became the enemy of the Crips. So, and they became the victims instead of, I guess the white man, I'm assuming. So, and that's where it's been ever since. So, I don't see it getting any better. I don't know what the outcome may be. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy out here, man. It's crazy, brother. But I love your show, man. You on BPM Media, man. So just checking in. That's all. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate that validation. My oldest brother, he's a Pomona Crip, and
Pomona. Okay.
Yeah, and what I think people also miss is that just like Nipsey Hussle, my oldest brother was shot 9 times point blank, and it was by another Pomona Crip. Nipsey Hussle was killed by another Crip. And a lot of the gangs here, the Latin
from his own gang,
yeah, a lot, and that's another thing. Is where people are like, oh, they don't mess with civilians, like they prey upon their own. So I'm not sure how gangs were able to get this mystique in our community. It's really.
There was a code at one point, in the 80s, but I don't know what happened. The code went away.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, appreciate you. Feel free to check in again and again, bro.
No problem. Peace.
All right. So I think that kind of validates our points and our conclusions. I got scared for a second when I saw that LA on the shirt. I thought he was about to check us. Check us.
Hey man, G Rock. Hey, what? Hey, what? I would have,
So I'm gonna share the guest link again. Oh wait, that's the wrong part. I'm gonna share the guest link again for all y'all who want to check in. And I know, man, California. Whenever I get there, I can never take care of business because all I do is walk around looking at the foliage, the succulents and the palm trees. And I mean, it looks like a prehistoric landscape. It's unbelievable. That's all I do when I'm in California. I get oh no, we got another caller.
My boy.
Lee.
Oh, Lee. Oh, I thought this was my boy. I was excited. I thought it was my
banned.
boy.
I told you he's banned.
No, man.
Okay,
Free
Lee
Dunn,
Clinton.
Man. What up, Lee? How you doing, bro?
Peace, brother Skipp. Peace, brother Diallo.
I'll take it.
Yeah, just a quick question. Earlier you told Skipp when he said guns don't kill people, people kill people. You said that's redneck-ish. So my question to you, Diallo, is why did you say that? Why did you say that statement is redneck shit?
Because rednecks came up with that absurdist statement. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. By that logic, why not give people bombs? Why not give people guns increases the capacity to kill people. There have been attempted mass murder events all over the world. In Japan, there's this phenomenon called the hikikomori, which is basically a whole generation of young Japanese men who are at the apex of what Marx called capitalist alienation. And those individuals seek to go out and commit, they're like incels here, and they go out to seek to engage in mass murder. But because they don't have access to military grade weapons like we do here, when they go on their killing sprees, the body count tends to be 1 or 2 or 0. So many nations do have people who want to lash out at society and go on killing sprees, but due to other nations having sensible gun regulations, their capacity and their ability to harm massive numbers of people has been destroyed. So even though people engage in killing, and just because people are the ones that do the killing, it is understood by all rational individuals and all rational systems that you don't give people unlimited capacity to kill other people and then just blame the people. So you educate and you humanize the population. At the same time, you limit their access and capacity to do harm to others.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I agree with that. I think the statement is it's a simplified statement, but I think it's a true statement. I mean, you went into great detail, and again, I agree with that. But I also think the statement is a true statement, and the only reason why I say that is because when a person wants to kill another person, if they, like you said, if they don't have a gun, they'll figure out another way to kill. We see that in prison, for example. There's not guns there, but they come up with all kind of ways to stab and to kill other people.
So
Also,
do
when
you
you
think
look at
citizens should have
and
tanks?
but let me make this say that again.
Do you think citizens should have access to rocket launchers and tanks?
No, that's absurd. But the other point I was going to
But
make
tanks
was
don't
that
kill people.
it,
People kill. Why do you want to take away my liberty and my right to own a tank or a rocket
all
launcher?
right, I'll answer that. The other thing I was going to say was and when you look at, like, for example, when you look at in England, they don't have the right to bear arms. But if you look at in England, they have a very high knife stabbing crimes where people are stabbing each other with knives, machetes, axes, because they don't have the right to bear arms in that country. But there's still violence. There's still people being stabbed. There's still, so my point, using those two examples with prison and what's going on in the United Kingdom, it shows you that when someone wants to kill, they will find a way to kill,
And
because it's
can I
more so their
ask you?
mindset
Okay,
than the
what
actual
is
tool
the
or the instrument that they're using.
what is the homicide rate in England?
I say that again. I didn't hear you.
The
What's the
homicide
homicide rate?
rate?
Wait, in the United Kingdom?
Yes.
I don't know about the whole country, but I know in London, in the inner city, it's very high. You got Google, so you can look at it.
I'm
But it's
looking at it. I
all
wouldn't have asked you.
there's the
Okay.
majority. The majority. My
It's
point is this. My point is not so much stats. My point that I'm trying to say is that even though they do have some illegal guns and stuff like that, but majority of people over there, they're not a gun country like we are. So the majority of crimes, especially in the inner city, especially dealing with black people in the inner city, in urban areas, they have their
do
knife crime. They
do
have
do they
gangs
have a
and their
higher
knife crimes
do they have a higher rate of homicide or a lower rate of homicide strictly in the black areas
compared to what?
compared to black areas in the United States? Brixton versus South Side of Chicago, or Brixton versus
Well,
Jackson, Mississippi.
America's a bigger country, so I don't think that's a good comparison. Just like
That's
earlier,
why I
you made a
said per
comparison
capita.
with that's why you like earlier you made a comparison with Chicago and Mississippi, or Chicago, or excuse me, any inner city like Chicago, New York, LA. You can't really compare it to, because I know before you said Mississippi,
Then
you
don't
said
compare it. Then
Kansas. We from
wait. Lee, give me a moment. You said don't compare it. Are we comparing U.S. and England or not? Because you brought up knife crime, not me. You brought up England, not me. And now you said you can't
I brought
compare.
up England. No. I brought up England as an example of a place that does not have guns like we do proliferated, right? They don't have guns, but there's still murders, there's still crime. And the murder, their choice of weapon, because they can't get
No
their hands
one
on a gun,
lead.
is
I
a knife.
agree with you.
That's what I
Right.
brought it up as.
And the fact that they don't have access to guns, and the fact that a person that intends to commit homicide has to resort to a knife as opposed to a gun, has directly correlated with lower rates of homicides, lower rates of deaths in those attacks. So they have a fraction of the homicides. And even when there is violent attacks and crimes, the likelihood of someone perishing or having crippling injuries is greatly reduced. So yes, no one is arguing that we can do away with crimes, homicide, or violence. But what we're saying is certain conditions can be implemented that will reduce the level of injury and death. So because you can't reduce it to 0, you should allow it to go to 1,000?
That's
That is
not my point.
okay. So again, like you said, the fact that England has stricter gun regulations has led to fewer deaths, fewer homicides, and fewer injuries. Yes?
I
Yes?
would not compare, because now I would not compare those things because,
Then
like
why
I
did you
said,
bring
like
the
for
two
example, when you
places
look
up?
at
Why did you bring it up if we're not comparing? Why are we talking about England? Who brought England into this?
your
Me or you?
comparison, your
You
comparison
say,
that
well,
you're
I want
doing
to
is not
compare it
my
when it supports my position, but when it detracts from my position,
your com-
I don't want to compare it. Let's not mention England again. We're all about back in the United States now.
we're mentioning it for two different things. The only reason why I brought it up was to show a place, right? Just like I brought up jail too. I'm showing a place where violent crime, assaults, murders happened, and that there's no gun. The point of me bringing that up is to say that when a person has it in their mind to kill, they're going to use whatever tool they could get their hands
Yes.
on.
And do you
That's what I'm
think they
trying.
should
That's why
have whatever?
I made
Okay,
the
I agree with that. I agree with that. So going
okay.
beyond
That's my
that,
point. That's
do
my
you?
point.
Okay, you're right. Are we supposed to go do anything with that point? Are we supposed to engage with that position or what? Are you so based on that position? Do you believe that every citizen should have access to whatever weapons they want? Because even if they don't have that particular weapon, they're going to try to kill people anyway. People can use a car to kill somebody. They can use a knife. They can use shoestring to strangle somebody. Because of that, do you believe that people should have open and unfettered access to any weapons that are available? Yes or no?
No, I don't believe that. That's not what I said. That's not the point I said. I
I
think my
didn't
point
say
is
that you
clear on what
said
I
it.
said.
I agree with your point. People will use a stone to kill another person if
Absolutely.
they have the intent to murder. We both agree to that. Why
Okay.
did you articulate that point? What is the reason for you
Well,
sharing
I
that
kept
with
it in
us?
reference with what you said, what I said to you, that was my original question, which is when Skip said, uh, guns don't kill people, people kill people.
How is
So the
that
point I'm
point
trying to,
relevant to the
the,
discussion? How does that inform how we should respond to the issue of gun violence? How does that point, people will use whatever weapon available to them, how should that fact inform our position on guns?
because it shows you that it's the mindset, right? That's why when I put in the when I
So
put in the
because that
comments, I
mindset
said,
exists, does that mean we should try to limit and regulate people's access to mass murdering tools, or should we open it up?
all right, let me answer one thing at a time. So I'll answer your first thing. When I said in the comment, I said sane people. That was my words. I said sane people do not go gun crazy. So my overall point is that it's the mindset. That's what I'm trying to say, not the actual weapon.
Again,
Now, as far as
again,
people,
again, I
hello,
will ask you.
I'm listening.
Yes, I agree. When someone gets it into their mind that they want to harm or kill another person, they can use a myriad of objects, tools, and weapons, including and not excluding knives or guns. Understanding that as a society or as a community, should we open people's access to whatever weapons they want, or should we limit access to weapons?
I don't think everyone should have access to anything. Like the examples you
We
brought up, I
agree.
think you said, did you, let me, yeah, so let me make sure I'm clear. I think before you said something about, I don't want to quote what you said. You said like a bazooka or something like that. Did you,
A
I don't
rocket
want
launcher,
to
yes.
misquote what you said. A rocket
Yes.
launcher.
I
Yeah,
say,
no,
why
that's
not
absurd. I
allow me
don't
to
agree
have
with
a
that.
tank and a rocket launcher? If rocket
Yeah,
launchers
that's
don't
absurd. And
kill people,
yeah,
people kill people.
no, I
That
don't
I
agree
think
with that.
that's absurd.
That's absurd. And then, yeah, of course. And
But it's not
even,
absurd to have an AK-47 or like the young man having a Draco walking down the street. That's not absurd.
I do. So I was about
But
to
if he
say,
had
like you just saw
a rocket launcher, that
recently.
would be absurd.
So recently in Florida, DeSantis just passed a
Can you answer
law.
my question
Uh,
first?
w-
Can you answer
I'm
my
answering
question
your
before we?
question. I'm
Okay.
answering your question. I can't. You got to let me. If you'll notice, I'm trying to be different than I was last time. I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm trying to wait and talk.
All right.
But I'll try to talk, and then you talk over me without letting me finish what I have to say. So if you just let me finish what I have to say, so I can
All
actually
right.
get it out. Um,
Okay. And please, 1 second. Please
recently,
continue to hold on. Hold on. Please continue to hold on, Black Bolshevik. We'll have you on very soon. I appreciate your patience. Proceed.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be quick. DeSantis just passed a gun law where you don't, in Florida, where you don't need a license. You don't require a license. You don't have to get any training. I disagree with that. I feel at the very least, because we know guns are made specifically to kill. So at the very least, you should have some training. You have to have training to get a car, right? So I do agree with there should be some type of regulation, right? But the thing that I notice when it comes to regulation, it, from what I see, that it affects law-abiding citizens more than it affects criminals, because criminals do not care about regulations.
The data
Criminals
does not
don't care about
support
the
that.
law.
The data does not
I'm
support
sorry.
that. The data does not
I'm sorry. I
support what
can't.
you're saying. The
Well, that's a
data,
matter of opinion because the data
no,
could
it's
be
not a
skewed.
matter of
We know the
opinion.
data is
It's a
skewed.
matter of research.
Yes, it is.
Lead now. Allow
Well,
me to nope.
I'll agree
Hold
to
on.
disagree.
Hold on. Now I'm going to mute you. Hold on. I don't want to, but the data does not support that.
Relax.
When allow me. You said something that is patently and demonstrably false. It has been demonstrated. Whether you go back to the Brady gun bill, do you go back to the Clinton administration in 1994, when the Bill Clinton administration implemented the omnibus crime bill, which I oppose the omnibus crime bill, but there was a portion of that crime bill that limited and reinforced the limited of assault weapons. It limited automatic and semi-automatic. It was strict regulation on magazine size. The homicide rate went, or the gun violence, not the homicide. The gun violence rate went down by over 30%. When the Bush administration implemented, allowed those regulations to expire, gun violence went up by over 200%. So the evidence and the data and the dead bodies demonstrate that regulation across the board of access to these weapons does limit the ability and intensity of gun violence across the board for civilians and the gangsters. But I'm gonna have to leave it at that, bro. I hope you call in again and
Of course. Let me say this real quick, man. Let me say this real quick to yeah. I enjoy the I listen to the show because I enjoy the content. You know, I don't agree. I agree with like 50% of the stuff that you say, but I would never say that you're not an intelligent brother with critical thinking. You know what I mean? So that's why I listen to the show. I listen to your program, and then through you is how I found BPM. So you know that's why I listen to. I don't always disagree, and I want to say I'm not your enemy. You know, and brother Skipp, if I offended you last week, I apologize because that wasn't my intention. All right. So you brothers, y'all have a good night.
Hey man, thank you so much. And the chat was saying that you were like, on it, and you were you had your thoughts, and I really appreciated that. And that's all I think we need to do. Just, just be loving and kind with each other. Cause I'm gonna be wrong a bunch, and I want you to be loving and kind with me. But yeah, I appreciate y'all, man. Thank you.
All right. I mean, y'all some good role models for me. I gotta stop hanging around y'all. I'm gonna lose my edge. Black Bolshevik. All right, we need more Black Bolsheviks. Black Bolsheviks, you're on deck.
Hey, what's good?
Question, comment, criticism.
I think I have a comment. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So you mentioned with the black gangs acting as informants and destabilizing black revolutionary movements via the COINTELPRO and drug cartels in Latin America working with the U.S. government and Haitian gangs and the Yakuza, who is also funded by the U.S. government. But I wanted to give a movie plug. Have you guys ever watched the Peaky Blinders?
My wife watched. That's not a movie. That's a TV series, right?
That's a TV series. Yes, I recently just started it. It has some time on it. It was released a while back, but it's based on what the subject is for tonight. And basically, the Peaky Blinders in the 1900s was a street gang. in Birmingham, England. And this street gang was becoming very notorious in racketeering and other stuff. So what was also going on was that the communists was trying to organize workers and have a workers' revolution. And also fascist parties was popping up inside England at the same time. So what happened with the Peaky Blinders is where they was becoming so notorious in Birmingham, they sent like a secret or private investor to really check things out and crush the movement. But what the private not the private investor, but the private investigator wanted to do under the permit of Winston Churchill, he wanted to use the Peaky Blinders, use their crime family to take down the communist movement and the fascist movement. So the Peaky Blinders end up working with the government as a street gang, and they was able to crush both movements in England at the time. So that's just a little movie plug. I wanted to reference that. It ties a lot into what you guys are talking about. So
I appreciate that, but is the Peaky Blinders is definitely a historical film. I did see some of the episodes. I didn't watch it all the way through, but there's a lot of layers to that because the Peaky Blinders were gypsies or Roma people, and Roma people were discriminated against very aggressively in the in within Central and Western Europe. They are like, for lack of a better example, they were like the minority. Yeah, the Jews, or and they were put on the front line in World War I. The countries that had been disrespecting and discriminating against them when the World War I implemented, they were forced to be tunnel rats. Like the main character in the Peaky Blinders was a tunnel rat.
That's exactly
like the worst
what happened
jobs.
to him. Yeah.
So anyway, but some people are like, oh, it is a fictional account, but there's a lot of historical accuracy there, the names, the timeline, and all that. And it kind of documents the underworld history between the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War. But if you're not into historical fiction, you can look up Operation Gladio. I think that's one of the most well-documented operations where they used organized criminal gangs to subvert revolutionary individuals and organizations in the post-World War. So if you don't want to watch, right.
Oh, okay.
So,
you're done?
Yeah.
Well, I'm into the historical stuff. I'm the person that you normally talk to on Twitter. You probably don't recognize, but yeah, we normally get into it on Twitter. But the guy that you mentioned, he was sent to war and then he came back, and where they didn't have like healthcare and stuff like that, mental health care and stuff like that.
Right.
A lot of the soldiers that came back to industrialize England, they had PTSD, and he was one of those ones. And they didn't.
It wasn't called. They hadn't even It wasn't called PTSD. It was shell shock. They didn't even have a word for it back then.
Yeah. So you can tell where he's going on these trips. And like you mentioned, before he got sent to war, his friend is the leader of the Communist Party in England at the time. And before he got sent to war, he was also a part of this communist movement. But then he came back from the war and he had changed and what's not. Right. But it's a very good movie if anybody wants to.
Well, yeah, but in the United States, it's the same thing. There were gangs were used to subvert communism. Even in it goes so deep in the American Indian movement, were attacked by Indian gangs. The AIM, the Revolutionary Native Americans who rise up and Wounded Knee Massacre. AIM was AIM had goon squads. I mean, that were supported by, but this was by the Indian Bureau and the FBI. It wasn't the CIA. But the goons stood for Guardians of the Oglala Nation. And the Oglala was one of the biggest established Native American nations that the AIM came out of. There's a political prisoner by the name of Leonard Peltier, whom they're basically trying to execute through medical neglect. So even Native Americans had young people recruited into gangs, and gang agendas and the Goon Squad who didn't fight against the Bureau of Indian Affairs, didn't fight against the FBI, didn't attack the white devils. They used all of their energies and weapons to attack Native Americans who were fighting for the liberation of their land and people. So it's really sad to me that now there's this folklore around gangsters being folk heroes and gangsters being anti-status quo and anti-establishment, revolutionary but gangster. It's really sickening that this myth has been pushed forward.
Yeah, so I think it touches more. Well, it supports the argument that gangs are more of an asset than a liability to the state, because they can be mobilized against revolutionaries at any time. So I don't, like you said, I don't really understand how they became. Well, I understand it via liberal media and what's not, how they became such a I guess a revolutionary, because like you said, with the energy that Black people have, it could, like you say, it could only go in two directions. And when we feel like we want to exert our or express ourselves or our opposition to the state, we'll do it either in a revolutionary way or we'll do it through toxic means. So I think they choose the toxic means to advertise more to us as a glamorous thing, with gangs and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically it.
Appreciate you.
Okay.
All right. Now we have Varan Isfariel. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Your question, comment, or criticism?
Yes, sir. Peace, brothers.
Peace.
Yeah, no, I just had and I think it could be a question too. But when we're talking about gangs and just the overall self-destructive elements, right, that come out of these conditions that all of us live in, would it be how can I say it, helpful for us to focus on the surface, when it comes to these gangs and try to deconstruct them and their origins? Or do we focus on the conditions that gave rise to them, right? Because for me, a lot of the times, I struggle with that, because some of us obviously come from these environments where some of our friends, ended up being in these gangs and paid the ultimate price, right? You could say that they had the knowledge, and the foresight in a way to know what will be the end of that, right? But when it comes to having any real compassion or understanding, right? Because a lot of these dudes, they don't even make it to 20, right? 18, 19 years old. They're out of here. So how do we talk about it and still focus on the conditions rather than, dismissing them as a straight up liability, right? They're no good, and there's no use for them, so to speak. If that makes sense, what I'm trying to say.
No. Skipp, you wanna?
No, I think, yeah. I'm rolling. I just want to say this. I'm rolling around, the idea, you challenging, this myth that there were these good things that came out of gangs, and it's really difficult for me to reconcile people that I know that did these amazing things and kind of had a role in shaping my development in life, and putting it in context with other things that could have been happening in my community, either that I wasn't fully aware of because I was so young, or that was just kept away from me because I was ignorant. And I'm just kind of wrestling with that a lot. And I think you're right. It's just wrestling with that I'm sitting with. And I think we're just kind of lifting up examples that kind of push that thought to go a little farther.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in order where I think that the gang as an institution or an organization cannot be integrated into a Black liberation struggle. The individuals who are recruited and indoctrinated into gangs can go through what is called deprogramming. It has been done successfully by organizations and individuals for decades. We have to disincentivize joining a gang, deglamorizing. Many of these rappers are right because many of these rappers, y'all favorite rappers, from Jay-Z, from the old school rappers to the modern day rappers, they are race traders. Ice Cube, they are race traders. They are anti-African propagandists. They are anti-African propagandists, and they have been well rewarded and compensated for their service to the system. So what we have to do as a community and as individuals is disincentivizing gangs. And many people that join gangs, they are young people, especially. No, not Ice-T. Every time, man, y'all, if y'all don't leave, no. What we have to do is disincentivize. And then when you listen to it, it's kind of on the surface. When someone joins the gangs, what do they say? Family. I joined it because I wanted family and connection. Even before the money, hoes, and clothes, before the material goods come in from joining a gang, most people want validation. They want connection, and they want security. So we as a community, a lot of times, us non-gangsters, us people who ain't in the streets, we individualize ourselves. I tell Black people all the time, live in your community, do not live in your homes. Many of us, when we get a little something, when we get a little job and we get a little property and we get a little car and we get a little status and we get a little title, we calcify and encapsulate that. And we're more concerned with holding on to our transient material wins than we are our collective advancement. How many fucking generations did we listen to young people say, I joined the gang so I could have a family. I joined the gang so I could have security. I joined the gang because that's my people. They show me love. So as a non-violent, de-escalating, non-confrontational way that we can reduce the impact and influence and strength of the gangs in our community is by disincentivizing. Stop allowing the media and the imagery that glamorizes this death style, not a lifestyle, to proliferate through our hood by elevating radical, revolutionary, pro-Black, life-affirming media and aesthetics and rhetoric. Because long before the first kid, like kids know. So that's one thing. We have to radicalize us because whether it's the white majority or the Black minority, liberalism cannot defeat extremism. The only thing that can challenge, so like these white liberals that are just like, let's all be good American citizens. And you got the right wing talking about it's a civil war. It's the same thing within our community. You got the extreme money, hoes, and clothes, rolling on my ops, murdering other Black people. And then the good side is liberals saying, hey, let's just strive for what we can in this system. Let's just apply ourselves and get a good job. So to defeat reactionary extremism, gangster extremism, self-hate, self-predation, you need communalism, radical revolutionary communalism. And you don't even have to directly confront or threaten or exercise violence against the gang. You would be cutting off their resources, which is one of the best ways to win a war without shooting a shot. And their resources, not just the body and flesh of our youth, their resources is the psychological, emotional, and ideological vulnerability that our community has. So I wish I could say more. So for the young people, we have to disincentivize them going to them. But first of all, the non-gangsters, it's not enough just to be a good guy, feed my kids. You have to radicalize and revolutionize yourself and radicalize and revolutionize your offspring and the youth in your community and provide that for which the gangsters because the gang will give you family, but what do they take? They'll take your fucking life. We can give you family and enhance your life. And when we show our people that, the gangs will become obsolete. How do I know? We have historical examples all over the globe. One of the areas that had the highest rate of internalized violence and predation was Palestine under the occupied territories. In the 70s, every weekend, they would go around Palestine, like the brother says, and they didn't have access to guns. And young Palestinian men were stabbing each other to death all over the West Bank and occupied territories. And there's a book that talks about that called Guerrillas by S.E. Anderson, a book called Guerrillas. And what happened was the Palestinian intellectuals, the Palestinian elites looked at themselves and said, well, like Yasser Arafat was like, I was an engineer, I was educated, I had a status and income as an individual. But I saw me as an individual, I was elevated, but as a person, as my identity as a Palestinian, I was nothing, I was stateless. So the Palestinian scholars and intellectuals went back to their communities and established what was called the First Intifada. And when they radicalized their youth, when they politicized their youth, it didn't stop their desire to lash out. It didn't stop their rage. It didn't stop their violence. It just redirected the violence to the true enemy. So ending the violence will not end until exploitation, oppression, white domination ends. Mm-hmm. What we have to do is redirect that energy. Stop telling young Black people to stop the violence, because all you're telling them is, like Malcolm said, you're telling Black people to suffer peacefully. Say, here is your enemy. Here are the tactics. Here are the motives. Here are the agendas of your enemies. And here are the tools and support you need to counter the enemies. That's all. That's all the Panthers did. That's all the Panthers did. Panthers explained to them the nature of your suffering and equipped them with the tools, intellectual and physical tools they needed to address the suffering, and gave them the support, family, love, and validation that they needed to be motivated. We're not doing any of that. Only thing we're telling Black youth is you could be a lawful capitalist or an unlawful capitalist. You can go to school and work for a multinational corporation, pimping and exploiting the world, or you can stay in the streets and pimp and exploit your community. Those are the two fucking options that we give them, which are both death options. So until we come up with a viable, established, radical, revolutionary, Pan-Africanist, socialist alternative, that's how we take away the gangs. And I'm sorry to go on this rant. Forgive me. Sorry.
No, that was perfect. Appreciate it, brothers.
Yeah, no, that was fire, bro. That was fire.
All right. It's getting late. We'll take.
What's that book again? What's that book again? Guerrillas?
Guerrillas by S.E. Anderson.
Oh, S.E. Okay, I put it in the chat, but I put S.C. I thought you were saying cat, not elephant.
It's been a while since I read that, but I believe it's S.E. Anderson. I don't want to pull it up on John Lee Anderson. What the fuck am I talking about? John Lee Anderson. I mean, this book is John Lee Anderson. He wrote also the autobiography. Let me pull up.
Can you put a link to that in the chat?
Yep, I'll put a link to it. I just got to find a non-Amazon link. Fuck Amazon and fuck Jay Bezos. Okay, I just put a link to it in there by Abe Books. I shared the link, and I'll share the screen as well. Let me see here. But this book talks about, oops, I don't know what that is. I'm still navigating, learning this tech. You know, I ain't no nerd. So I don't know. That's how you excuse your ignorance, by pretending that. Okay, here it is. This is the book. My cover doesn't look like this, but this is a book called Guerrillas. And this book basically talks about the young men around the world living under colonization, living under genocidal oppression, living under racist regimes, who don't join gangs to exploit their own people, but they join revolutionary organizations to fight their oppressors. And it talks about in the chapter on the Palestinians about how the homicide rate and violence rate amongst Palestinians was brought almost to zero when the Palestinians had their first intifada and began to recognize the Zionists as their enemies instead of recognizing other Palestinians as the enemy. And they started a revolutionary movement as opposed to a demobilizing gangster culture. So that's the book. John Lee Anderson. I get S.E. Anderson and John Lee Anderson confused. So forgive me. I need to stop going off the dome. So anyway, I don't even know who S.E. I just wanted to see why S.E. Anderson came up in my mind, but I don't know where I got that from. But anyway, there you go. That's the book. So appreciate you, Raphael. I hope you continue to tune in and engage with us.
Yeah, no, for sure. Appreciate it, brothers.
All right, bro. Next time.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Okay, I think that's it. I'll let you get back to fatherhood. I appreciate your time. You want to go ahead and close us out? Oh wait, let me just give shout out to our employers. License to carry gun is like breach, great and bad for colors. I'm going to use that. I don't know if I'm going to credit you, ZZ Lion, but I'm definitely going to use that. Thank you. And CS for super stickers. Thank you for everyone for your support. We're going to have Brother Skipp close us out until Wednesday after next.
Thank you. Thank you for community. Thank you for patience. Thank you for grace. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for a willingness to debate and learn and grow with one another. And recognize that we are fighting against a system and not each other. Thank you. Amen.
Ashe. All right. I'll be seeing you Sunday.
Yeah, man.
Right?
I can't wait, bro. Yeah.
Are you going to find a church in Kansas City, or what we going to do Sunday?
Probably grab something to eat.
All right. If you in Kansas City, all right, I'll take you to some vegan spot. That's my only requirement. All right. So I'll see you Sunday in Kansas City. All our people in Kansas City, holla at us, and you'll see the Rational Radicals will be back on August 2nd. Our Black August. We'll have our first Black August. August
hey, hold on. Let me tell you, I'm gonna be a little late for that one. I got a soccer meeting.
You gotta stop all this bourgeois middle class.
Hey man. Hey man. I'm a dad, man. They come first.
Us revolutionaries, we supposed to live miserable lives in the trenches. Here you are having a fulfilling life and having healthy relationships with your offspring. Stop it. You're giving us a bad name, man. We hood.
Absolutely.
All right, bro.
Hey, right on to the real, bro.
I'm looking forward. I'll see you in Kansas City Sunday.
First time.
Yeah. All right.